All right, I think we'll start getting underway. Hi, everyone. My name is Alison. Thanks for joining us today for Music Victoria Presents Innovative Approaches to Presenting Live Music. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which we at Music Victoria work, the Woi Wurrung and Boon Wurrung people. We extend our respects to their ancestors and all First Peoples and Elders, past, present, and emerging. I'll just run through some Zoom housekeeping to start with. If everyone could please keep your microphones on mute, and if you have any questions, that you can put them in the chat. There will be an opportunity for live questions at the end of the session, and the session will be recorded and posted on our website. If you do not wish to be recorded, then please send through questions via the chat. Dale Packard, the General Manager of Music Victoria, will be moderating the discussion today. We have assembled a panel of speakers from venues varying in scope and musical offerings in order to highlight the innovations made during these challenging times. Participating in the discussion today, we have Richard Bradbeer, Ben and Liam from Colour Club, Robyn from Footscray Community Arts Centre, and finally Juliette from the Retreat Hotel Brunswick. First, I'd like to invite each of the speakers to share a bit about themselves and their venue pre-COVID and what they have been presenting since reopening. And we'll start with Richard.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me and thank you for attending. I could be a bit of an outlier on this one because I hadn't really had any events management experience at all until under 6 months ago. I'm just pretty much a session bass player, just played in bands for 15 years, and obviously that being my job, I took a big hit when the pandemic hit and the lockdowns ensued. A year of work kind of went up in smoke, and you start scrambling and trying to come across some entrepreneurial ideas to get things going. But long story short, the reason I'm here is because when gigs started coming back, all the ones that I had were at places like the Corner Hotel or Thornbury Theatre to 50 people in multiple seatings a night, which I really appreciated. But, I wanted to try to make something happen on a larger scale. And I figured if you could do shows outdoors at a central public location, and venues could maybe have operators like a proxy and use that space to put on their own shows at a greater capacity, then that would be a sensational thing to happen. And I got in touch with a friend, Bonnie Dalton, who works with Creative Victoria, and she put me in touch with the Arts Centre, and they managed to make it all happen. So that's why I'm here, but I'm not actually representing a venue per se, just I don't know.
Just a cool idea. Representing
just an idea. Yeah.
And next, could Ben and Liam share a little bit about what you guys have been doing?
Hi everybody, we're coming to you from Woi Wurrung Wurundjeri land today, so just acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're coming to you. I'm Liam.
And Benny.
We are the two directors of Colour Club in Carlton, which is a live music venue upstairs and a nightclub downstairs. So we do both sides of that coin. Sort of earlier in the night, we're pushing live music stuff upstairs, and then the heavier nightclub electronic stuff downstairs. We opened with our life savings about 5 months before the pandemic, which was awesome. And so, we had to do some pretty quick adapting following the closure of the actual venue, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. But Colour Club is now a record label as well as a live music venue and nightclub. And we've started to do events outside of the bricks and mortar of the space that is known as Colour Club, I suppose. So that's a bit about us. Thanks for having us.
Cool. And Robyn?
Hey there, thanks for having me. I'm Robyn from Footscray Community Arts Centre, and I'm tuning in from Boon Wurrung and Wurundjeri land. For those that don't know us, we're an independent creative precinct in Footscray. We're an independent arts centre, so we're pretty rare. And we have a big kind of multidisciplinary program every year, but live music is playing. There's so many amazing musicians in our part of Melbourne. For us, you know, what we do is grounded in place. And as a charity, we don't have a lot of cash, but our assets are really significant. Our venues are significant for artists. And as we entered 2020, kind of our mantra was that our precinct was alive every day. Turns out it wasn't. It was only alive for a few days that year because we were shut down pretty much the whole time. So I think, like everyone, we dabbled in the digital space, but really our rationale there was about providing work to our amazing staff and the artists that we were working with. So we didn't go for volume, we went for quality. And now we've come back, we're doing a lot in the outdoor space as well to the best of our ability, but there's a lot of challenges there too.
Thanks, Robyn. And finally, Juliette.
Hey, so I'm from the retreat in Brunswick, and I've been there about 2 years. Before that was programming Grampians Music Festival in Regional Vic. And obviously when that stopped happening, I was full-time at retreat. And the pandemic's been really shifted us because we were a completely free entry venue beforehand. And now we're doing a program of almost 100% ticketed shows. Yeah, so it's been a really big change in that way. But super positive being able to get a lot of the community involved and lots of people back into work. We've been doing lots and lots of shows, more than ever post-pandemic actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'm going to hand over to Dale.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what you've all been up to and some of the things that have worked or not worked. Juliette, I guess because you were just talking before, maybe we'll start with you. I guess, can you talk a little bit about some of the hardest things you've had to deal with while adapting to this, I guess, new model, and also, yeah, maybe some things that you've found have worked really well, and anything that you might want to take into the future, even when things do go back to normal.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, being a kind of completely free entry venue beforehand was something that I always really loved working on because it was super accessible to a lot of people. We were still able to pay bands really well because the venue was quite a popular pub in its own right. So we managed to have free entry shows 7 days a week and have lots of people come in and out of the venue all the time, but still pay artists quite well. And so when, I guess that also means that the community knows about us as a free entry venue, and they know that we have a very different way of running things to other venues. And so I think the community had kind of learnt that for a long time. In probably the first year that I was there, sort of changed the programming there quite a lot. We had a lot more new music there and a lot more sort of pop artists and things than ever before. And then sort of having to shift completely into a ticketed model has been good in that sort of we've been able to pay bands maybe even better than before, because we've been running a model where we're paying bands 100% of ticket sales, and so there's no sort of venue hire fee or anything. We'll pay for the soundie, and then we provide a door person and charge the bands for a little bit of that. And so I guess but the tricky thing about that for me has been sort of completely learning a new way of doing my job. So there's obviously a lot more admin tasks involved in doing ticketed shows, which is something that I hadn't done in a long time, having worked at the venue for a while with free entry. So, and I think another thing that we've found quite tricky, and I'm sure this is similar for everybody else, is that with things changing so rapidly, it's you make a new spec sheet and teach people how the venue's running, and then the next week it's changed and you sort of have to do another one. and you might have booked gigs 2 months in advance and told people they're a certain capacity, but then that's gone up or down, a week before their show. So I think having to adapt really quickly is something that I found quite hard, having not really worked in the position for almost 8 months while nothing was happening.
So you had some situations where you had a show booked and then had to cut the capacity before. How did you manage that with ticket holders and that kind of thing?
So we managed to sort of find another date to do like a second show, and just have to say to everyone, some of you will have to go to this other date. It's fine if you need to get a refund, and just sort of try and manage it that way. People have been really understanding, I guess, because they know how crazy everything's been. But yeah, that's definitely some of the trickier situations.
And this might be a really, I guess, obvious question, but I assume you went to the ticketed model because there just wasn't enough revenue coming over the bar to be able to pay the artists for free. So you need to find a different income source. Is that basically the idea?
That's definitely part of it, but it's also because capacity was obviously restricted, and we needed to sort of completely change the shape of the venue. So I don't know if many people here have been to the retreat, but our main band room is in the middle of the venue. So it's kind of a thoroughfare usually, but having ticketed shows has meant that we've needed to sort of close that off and make sure that only 50 people are allowed in there.
And to what degree has it worked or not worked? I imagine you probably had some shows that have sold well or others that not, but all in all, how have you felt about that pivot?
Yeah, it's actually worked really well. I think in a lot of ways it's been a really positive thing, because I've always thought it's a problem that sort of people pay for every other art form but not for music. So while it was a really good thing for accessibility to have free shows, I think a ticketed model means that people understand that music is a form of art that needs to be paid for, just like anything else.
Yeah.
So I think going into the future, I'd like to kind of keep a lot of that. At the moment, we're doing 7 ticketed shows a week and 1 free entry show. So I guess I'd like to see how things go and maybe bring a couple more free entry shows in. So
right.
a mix
do
of
a bit of a mix moving forward, perhaps.
Yeah.
I guess one thing that we've probably noticed is that the prices for shows have gone up because of the reduced capacity, which I think is a great outcome, actually.
Me too.
That if we're resetting the benchmark of what people should be paying for a show, I think that's really great, because it's been, $10 for a local live show for like 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So that'd be one thing. It'd be good to see continue.
Yeah, I think that's been a really, really positive thing, actually, and hopefully continue sort of everywhere.
Yeah. And anything else, Juliette, that you wanted to mention that you guys have been working on?
I guess one of the challenges that I'd like to mention is that we wanted to bring music back sort of quicker than we did. And I had a big plan to have outdoor shows. So we've got a massive beer garden and we've got a stage there. So we would have been able to have kind of 100 cap shows in the beer garden had we been allowed to use that space, but unfortunately council restricted us from using the outdoor space, so we had to kind of pull everything indoors and cut those shows capacity and everything like that.
Another thing that I've heard some people talk about is that 2021 should be the year of no guest lists. Which I'm personally really into.
Me too.
I'm not sure, happy for anyone to comment on that when they're speaking. I've seen that go around a bit, and given how much the industry is suffering, to kind of set that as a new standard, or maybe guest list if you really, really need it. Robyn, I might go to you next. So I guess you mentioned you took quite a bit of activity online. Maybe can you talk about some of those initiatives and the ways in which you brought live performance into the online space, and I guess other new models you had to look into during COVID?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll definitely say there's a steep learning curve for us going online, and the fact that I just dropped out from this panel, one of the biggest challenges is that our internet sucks. So that's an ongoing issue for us. But really, I guess we work with a lot of communities that need a lot of support, and when everything was pivoting online really quickly, we kind of put the brakes on rolling out initiatives really hastily, because we also felt like a lot of the artists and musos we were working with were also really stressed. So this kind of need to create new content really quickly didn't actually align with how we work, and we just needed to kind of press pause on that. As we kind of settled into that first long lockdown, we started kind of revisiting what our core function is as a venue and a creative space, and that's really about storytelling. So we launched a new podcast, which is a new space for us, and focused on a lot of musicians we're working with, but also other artists as well. So that was one way that we could do that in a really safe way. We could work with the artist offline, we could develop it and edit it. So that was one initiative, and that podcast for us actually surprised us in terms of its reach, and we've actually done a new season too. So we're doing a season while we're open and really aligning that with whatever live programming we're doing in our venue.
What's the podcast?
It's called FCAC Radio, and it's really stories that are grounded in the West, but also in dialogue with artists nationally and internationally as well. Mm-hmm. We were successful in the Victoria Together funding, which some folks here might be familiar with, to develop content. But like everything, working with government, there's a big ask. There's a lot of expectation with those grants to deliver a lot with not a lot of resources. So that was a bit of an arm wrestle that we had throughout the year. But what we really used that money for was to create 4 live performances that we recorded called FCAC Music. You can sense the theme here. There's a lot of branding going on, but we worked with 4 musicians to create a totally immersive, basically like a film studio in our performance space, which is about a 250 capacity space. We decked it out with these incredible panels for projection. We did live projection mapping, live music performances, and we had this incredible crew of about 20 technicians working on that to really support the artists in the best possible way. And those videos have just been released on the Victoria Together platform. So really encourage people to check them out. So there's Gordon, Kwang, Kian, and others. So yeah, have a look. They're absolutely incredible.
Sorry, Robyn. I was just going to jump in and explain a little bit about Victoria Together for people who aren't aware. So there's it's a website, victoriatogether.gov.au, I think it is. And they're doing all kinds of partnerships with different organisations. Music Victoria is one of them, and they're getting different organisations to commission work to make online content. So in the case of Music Victoria, we got a number of the nominees for the Music Victoria Awards to perform in live music venues around Victoria, and then I think it's going to be up. Is your content up yet, Robyn?
It is. It seemed to take forever. I don't know if you had that experience, but
I think ours is either up or just about to be up. I'm not sure, but there'll be a lot of great Victorian content on that website as well.
Yeah, it is great, but I mean, it's also one of those things where we all have digital fatigue, I think, and we need to be realistic that, especially for art, their craft. You know, we think about musicians. They obviously use a lot of channels for their craft, but performance is a huge part of that. And for live music lovers, that connection can't be replaced in the digital space. So we're back open as a venue. We started the year with a live performance series called Bluestone Sessions, so outdoor live music. And the response to those concerts were huge. They all sold out immediately. And we really focused on them being a family space. So we had, they were all ticketed, but kids under 12 were free. And seeing families engage with live music and seeing that next generation of music lover coming through is really great, and something we're probably going to continue to really invest in this year as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Robyn. So I guess that you just went through a whole bunch of stuff there that all sounds really exciting. Which out of those, which what things did you find was more successful or less successful? Like what kind of things would you want to take into the future because it really worked, or would just experiment that failed?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to be honest, part of the failure might have been that we try and do a lot, and I think our team was we're still tired. We're not recovered from last year, but being a public place, you know, there's a lot of expectation to be on all the time. So I think maybe we could have made we could have taken on less is probably the biggest failure. But the things that work well are things that are the things that really aligned with our existing values. So we're really keen on that really supportive, safe environment. And the outdoor music venue is something we're really keen to invest in. So we spent a lot of last year advocating for investment into the venue itself. Because although live music outside at FCAC is awesome, there's no infrastructure, there's no cover. You know, if we get a hint of rain, you know, it's good night, Irene. So really using the space to advocate for investment in venues in the West is a big priority for us as well.
Mm. And are people starting to come back to the space now, or not really?
Oh yeah, it's pumping.
It's pumping. Okay,
yeah.
good.
So yeah, live music stuff's been selling out. We've done another partnership with our new cafe on site to have music every Friday night as well. And the community turning up, you know, it's really heartening because it really felt like everything was a big risk coming back. So we're feeling really good about it, but I guess the JobKeeper cliff, falling off the cliff at the end of this month, I think everyone, particularly in the arts sector, is a little bit worried about that. So we'll see how we go.
Thanks, Robyn. Rich, I might go to you next. So you were working on the Live at the Bowl series, but specifically for the venues, the section that the venues are programming. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. This series was called Happy Mondays, which happened Mondays in February. And yeah, had approached the Arts Centre in October. But really, because of the way that the funding was sort of secured, we kind of got the green light in quite late December. And then it was go. So yeah, sorry if I ruined anyone's Christmas.
So you've kind of got, it's a bit of a complicated structure in a way. So you've got the Arts Centre, which owns Sydney Myer Music Bowl. I think
that's right.
And then Sydney Myer Music Bowl putting on summer series Live at the Bowl. And then as part of that, there's the Happy Mondays.
Yeah.
So that's correct, yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on at the Bowl. In February, I had involvement with that series, but I was also, you know, performed there twice with a few different bands for completely other events, you know. So there was a constant swirl of activity happening around there. But they, you know, dealt with it all really well. And I think, yeah, it was incredible that they were able to get it all across the line in the end.
So I guess this idea of like a venue programming bands for another venue is a little bit weird. It
is weird. But yeah, I think I approached it all quite naively. I used to study opposite from the Music Bowl at Victorian College of the Arts, and I was so sick of all the classical students at VCA getting everything and the improv students getting nothing. And I was sick of seeing only Orchestra Victoria and the MSO at the Bowl. So
yeah,
I was like, why do they get it all? Why can't someone else have any of it? So I didn't even know that the Arts Centre were booking it when I approached them. Well, I approached Bonnie Dalton, you know, who used to, you know, work for Music Victoria. And she put me in touch with Kat Murphy and Edwina Lunn at the Arts Centre, who are absolutely fantastic. And they just jumped at the idea. The impression I got, which I'm not exactly sure of, was that I think that there was a vacancy for something to happen there at the Bowl, and they wanted something a bit more grassroots and community oriented, and something that reflected, you know, the smaller elements of our scene that make it so successful. And they hadn't conceptualized what was going to happen yet. So when I came with a template for something, they jumped at the concept, and you know, a few variations later ended up getting something that was feasible and that could work.
And how do you select the venues, and how do the venues select the bands?
I pretty much went down the whole list of any music venue in Melbourne that had received some kind of support in the last year or two, and sent a lot of emails to a lot of different email addresses. Any email address on the page, you know, because it was Christmas, in between Christmas and New Year, no one's responding to emails. It was very hard to get phone numbers for a lot of places. So I was calling up anyone I knew or had worked with. I was emailing others. I was getting suggestions from bookers that I did know to get in touch with, you know, other venues. Like, for example, Jason Moore at the Gasso put me in touch with the wonderful crew at Colour. Yeah, so it's just a lot of hustling, and it was a busy time. So I'd be doing a rehearsal and run. I need a toilet break and run to the toilet and shoot off a couple of emails and run back to rehearsal. And
so you approached the venues, and I guess offered it to them, or did venues express interest? Or
yeah, I offered it to them as an initial thing to see, would you be interested in participating in something like this? It might run according to this kind of structure. It did end up changing over the course of a month. But yeah, generally, the responses that I got back, a lot of them didn't respond. The ones that I did get back were by and large very positive, and one or two were pretty negative, all with very valid concerns, and perhaps misread what I was, you know, trying to achieve. But, you know, that's completely cool. You know, they had valid reasons for not wanting to be involved. I think the ones who have expressed, appreciation at the success that they had.
Yeah. If it's not too awkward, are you able to talk a little bit about those challenges and I guess misconceptions, or what you were trying to achieve, and what was misunderstood?
Well, yeah, it's, as I said, it's very valid. But, you know, one venue I got in touch with said pretty much that they'd be competing against themselves. You know, they already have music going on. They don't want to be in direct competition with themselves. They don't want to potentially put themselves up at a place like the My Music Bowl and have just tumbleweeds there. So, you know, there's a face losing thing, there's a financial competitive part of it. And I understood it all. And it was passionate. There was a passionate email.
Yeah. Do you feel like there was any issues with competing for the same market? Or I guess the idea was you're probably trying to support the venues to get a bigger audience and outside their normal Well,
the initial idea was that the venues take over the space, employ as much of their own staff as possible, but that was going to be too difficult to organise in the context of what ended up happening. We tried to put it on a Monday, which would be a sort of hospo night. Often people have Mondays off and people could go out and party. It hopefully wouldn't conflict with things that were happening on the weekend. And hopefully, because there was a significant budget that was secured for it, that it wouldn't be the same band playing on Saturday who'd be asked to play on Monday, just because the scale of them might be a little bit different. Also, there was like a flow-on effect of if the venue was open on a Monday, everyone from the bowl went there after the show. Like, for example, the old bar was just completely jammed. And then it flowed onto other venues like the Shady Lady down the road, and they were all heaving on the Mondays. So
like the venues provided the after party.
Exactly, yeah. Right. And substantial were the scope of the after parties.
Right. That's probably a nice unforeseen outcome.
Yeah. It was a little bit unforeseen, but when it happened, like, it seemed like a no-brainer. Of course, this was going to happen. It was apparent from like the beginning of the very first gig, which was put on by the Tote and the Old Bar, Cash Savage and the Meanies have a thirsty audience base, and you could tell from the opening of gates that the bars were going to be busy.
Cool. So did the venues get were they given a budget each, or how do you manage the fees for the artists and that kind of thing?
Yeah, once the Arts Centre presented the budget, there was a little bit of discussion with the venues as what would suit you best in how to break up this chunk of money, especially because the venues were collaborating with each other as well, 2 venues per night. So yeah, it was really up to them to kind of see how they wanted to cut up that pie. They were pocketing money from tickets sold. So the more people could get in, the better. But often it was 50-50. One band would select someone, one band would select someone else.
The venues would get the ticket sales or a percentage of the ticket sales?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a bit different with each, but generally it was 50-50, and yeah, a lot of it was negotiated between the venues and the Arts Centre.
Yeah.
So I was kind of a facilitator in the end, and once everyone was put together, I could kind of step back from it a bit.
Yeah, and I guess obviously you're only doing a relatively small part of the summer series and all the events that are happening at the Bowl, but can you speak a bit about, I guess, some of the ways in which that venue had to adapt to due to COVID? I mean, probably a lot of people.
Oh yeah, the most obvious one is you walk in and it looks like the sale yards, you know, like with stock pens everywhere. And I can't remember what I think maybe 15,000 people is the pre-COVID capacity of the Bowl, but the COVID safe capacity is 3,000. Right. So they're still able to get thousands of people in there, but it doesn't feel like there's that many there, even when there's a couple of thousand there in the daytime, because you can see all the separated pens and cages, booths or whatnot. But when the sun sets, the vibe really kind of kicks in. That was something that we kind of noticed as it went along. But obviously, yeah, they were very strict on staff in terms of health and safety measures, rigorous, sort of, and like frequent health checks, and very like separated. Beg your pardon, with the audience, a lot of space to get around. When my mum came to watch me play, for my mum and my wife came to watch me play at one of the shows, not part of the Happy Mondays, but with Vicar and Linda Bull at the Bowl. They were reprimanded for dancing. They're doing everything they could to try to make it safe.
Well, I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but there was an announcement today that I think the dance floor density quotients have been removed now, that 1 per 4 square meters.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yeah,
good seeing some fist pumping by the whole team. That's great.
Yeah, well, I've because I'm generally a musician more than anything else, I've played a lot of shows this year, and I can certainly tell you that even though sitting down is better than not attending anything at all, people don't want to remain in their seats, unless it's something where people were already normally seated. Like at Port Fairy Folk Festival, where you bring along your chairs, or something like that. But it's very, very difficult to stop people from congregating up towards the front of the stage.
We had some very interesting conversations with state government and Music Victoria about, how do you define dancing? If someone's standing in front of a band and they're kind of swaying gently, are they dancing? Is that considered a dance floor? Or
I'm pretty sure that it ended up being like the airmen out front of vacuum cleaner shops and stuff. You could have your feet planted on the ground and your arms flailing and your body maybe moving to the side, but you couldn't move your feet.
Yeah, well, the response we got to those inquiries was that we're not going to define what dancing is. That's
okay.
That's not going to happen. People are just going to have to use their own judgment for that one. But thankfully, it seems like that rule has been removed, and that it's just the 1 per 2 square meter like everywhere else. Rich, one more thing I was going to ask is, I mean, in a way, this kind of feels like a bit of a one-off. It's a very unusual circumstance, venues that aren't really able to operate at any significant capacity, and this huge investment from the government to activate the bowl. But I guess, can you imagine anything like this continuing in the future, or using this model in other ways?
I think so, but I hope not. I'm glad that there's some template in place now. It was difficult to get it across the line at the last minute, but thanks to everyone involved, and especially the venues and Kat Murphy and Edwina Lunn at the Arts Centre, we're able to get it across the line. It would be a lot easier next time round. But next time round, I hope, would only be in extreme situations where there was another variant of the same disease or a new, disease and pandemic, which unfortunately could be likely in our lifetimes. But I, really hope not. Though I am glad that we were able to crack the bowl open a bit from the MSO stranglehold.
That's true. I mean, even if things go back to normal, you'd like to think there's now this precedent for engaging more local acts and more contemporary music, I suppose, at the bowl.
Yeah.
Benny and Liam, I'll go to you next. So you guys are from Colour Club in Carlton, have done all kinds of interesting adaptations. I remember receiving an email from you about like some kind of, it was like a dinner date pack or something that was being sent out. You could get, I can't remember what was in it, but there was like a dinner date pack. But I guess you guys have done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it started with the kind of obvious things, which was alcohol delivery commenced pretty quickly. The VCGLR were really great about extending current license holders to be able to do delivery alcohol. My partner is a florist, so we collaborated with her to make the brilliant pack that you're referencing, which was her flowers.
And a robe. Yeah, we did some wine glasses.
Yeah, it was
might have been a candle in there as well.
Some candles.
It was a stay-at-home kind of decadent package you could buy from Colour.
We called it.
Yeah. So that was a big one. In that early phase, it was delivering alcohol and creating merchandise. And one of the ideas that we've had for years and years and years, but never had the time to do, was a record label, which we're so grateful we had the time on reflection to start a label. So we put out a VA compilation of artists that had played at the venue before, because as much as we needed financial support, obviously they were all out of work as well. So
VA's various artists?
Yeah. Various artists, yeah. So Benny's been leading that front more so than me, but doing an orange and a blue side and kind of representing what's been going on in the venue. So yeah, there was a few different things that were going on prior to our actual reopening. And ultimately when we could reopen, it was dinner first.
Yeah, we started doing dinner because the only way we could open is if we were offering food. That lasted for 5 weeks in between the lockdowns.
We didn't have a kitchen though, so we just were like, well, we'll make it up.
We partnered up with our friend JP, who was cooking pizza out of his pizza trailer in the back laneway of the club. And then we partnered up with Pietro from Mr. Pietro, and we had one of our staff members driving the pizzas backwards and forwards. So yeah,
you can stay as long as you've got a pizza on the table.
Yeah. And then in the last week of that 6-week period, I think it was, we did our first weekend of seated shows with dining.
And then the second lockdown happened. So it was back to more of the same, basically. And yeah, we were working other jobs as well. I mean, we didn't have the luxury, unfortunately, of having been open for enough years to have built up any sort of bank that we could lean on in that phase. And we kind of had outstanding debts to a lot of the contractors that had done the initial fit out work for us as well.
Did you guys receive funding through the live music venues, funding from Creative Victoria? Yeah.
But that was
a lot later.
7 months after the pandemic started. So
right.
We had a lot of catching up prior to that moment, working as labourers, delivery guys. We did a few different things. So during that second lockdown, yeah, it was kind of, all right, now we know what things work, which is the label and delivery stuff. We'll focus in on that. And yeah, did some work alongside you guys with Save Our Scene, which was a sort of union, I guess, of bookers and venue owners fighting for funding for venues. So that took up a lot of the second lockdown, and eventually, thankfully, got that funding announced. So yeah, that leads us to kind of the post-second lockdown, which was switching straight back into what we'd done between lockdowns previously. So first seated shows, then standing shows. Thankfully, the standing shows were enabled or allowed the week before our Melbourne Music Week shows. So we had a pretty incredible experience the first weekend of December. Reopening and seeing people dance, very emotional for the both of us.
Yeah, very much so.
And then we started offering private hires. We had someone's wedding. We did birthdays, all sorts of things that we hadn't really considered before in the actual programming of the space. Extended it to include some off-site things, so open air parties. We're currently in the Collingwood Yards, which is the home of our new office, and we did a party, live music and DJ party in the courtyard here with food and drinks and all that sort of thing as well. So that's kind of, I suppose, the model we're moving forward with now is colour doesn't just have to be those four walls.
Yeah, and especially with the given the restrictions, like ways to generate any subsidiary income was paramount to us, you know. So, you know, initially the way we worked around a lot of the restrictions was doing cinema style sessions. So if we had a live act up, like a lot of the time pre-COVID as well, we'd split upstairs into its own event and downstairs into its own event. So we'd have like 2 sessions upstairs for like a live act or a band or something, and then we'd have 2 sessions downstairs for like DJ style, like live electronic stuff. And we were running that pretty much up to present.
This morning's announcement probably changed things there.
Yeah.
I think people have been really willing and understanding about the multiple session thing. They come in, they do their 4 hours, the sort of, for the first time ever, since either of us have been working in music, people arriving, you know, 1 minute past doors and buying drinks and staying on the dance floor and watching the artists. You know, it's probably more of a nightclub thing than anything, but, you know, people sort of move to the outside or they go to the smokers and they're chatting each other's ears off for half the night. But we found people really, there was a really palpable sense of we nearly lost this, so we're going to you know, appreciate it properly in the way that it should be now. But yeah, ultimately I think people are looking for things to go back a little bit to the way that they were, and just in terms of start times and end times and no sessions and that kind of thing. Like,
and out of all those, you know, various iterations, what were some of the wins and losses?
Doing the sessions was like massive for us. You know, we were able to activate both spaces upstairs and downstairs in a way that we weren't able to pre-COVID. It just made a lot more sense logistically, and it was just far more efficient. You could turn over, you know, if we were at full capacity and we were doing those sessions, then we'd be turning over, you know, twice the amount of people that we would on a normal night, and people are more likely to spend more money in a shorter amount of time. So we found that super beneficial, and it's something we'll probably carry on through for the live music stuff. But as Liam was saying, that might not be the case for the DJ nightclub style stuff as people want.
Yeah.
You know, the time.
Yeah.
I want to have the same experience, I think, too. People say, oh, did you go to this party? Not which session of this party did you go to? I don't think that's kind of changed in the psyche.
Right. Yeah. But a session for a gig would make sense.
Yeah. It's basically like if somebody sold out a show on a Wednesday and then did a show on a Thursday, but you're just doing it in one night rather, you know.
Yeah.
I think also this bi-monthly outdoor event stuff. I mean, we've only done, our Happy Mondays is on Monday because our original one was during the snap lockdown. So we've got that to look forward to. We're doing more things with the Collingwood Yards. We're looking at Fairfield Amphitheatre. We're talking to some of our wine suppliers about doing regular programming at their wineries. Yeah, I think we will try to be doing that stuff in conjunction with the club stuff, because at the end of the day, the club's never activated during the day, really, ever.
Yeah.
We look at doing a 24-hour party here and there in the future, but generally speaking, there's no, you know, we don't have our own competition during the day or on a Monday, for example. Like, that works perfectly for us.
Yeah.
So that was hugely successful here. That really got us through January and February, and we think it will probably help us just in general moving forward.
Yeah, there's a real, I guess, interesting theme emerging in that venues are kind of stepping up to be not just a space, but kind of a promoter. You know, and with what was going on with Rich's stuff at Happy Mondays, and even Robyn down at Footscray Arts Centre, kind of can seeing it as not just a space, but yeah, like a promoter. Or in your case, Benny and Lehman, like, you know, doing a label as well. I feel like, you know, that kind of model of thinking of your business or your organisation as being something that exists in the abstract beyond the walls that you might rent is a really cool takeaway, I think. I mean, I imagine you'll still be doing the label and putting on outdoor shows and all this kind of stuff once the COVID restrictions lift, I assume.
Yeah, definitely. I think what Robyn said really struck a chord with us. We definitely put more on our plate than we probably are capable of maintaining. But we've got some really great new staff coming in as well to help with that, which is exciting. And I think, yeah, a couple of the other biggest things that have been beneficial to us about the last 12 months have been kind of going back to what the core values of the venue were. And I think it's really easy, especially for venues like ours, to kind of get in with the heavyweight promoters and start thinking, oh, we need to be booking international shows every weekend, and we need to be the big ritzy thing that everybody wants to go to all the time, and kind of forget that the way that we cut our teeth in Melbourne's music community was by doing our own parties, by becoming friends with other local DJs and local bands, putting them on shows with us. And that is actually the ethos that makes people want to come to Gawenda, not that we have all this money and we can spend it, because we don't. And I think it was a little bit of a reminder, like, hey, it's not only is it okay to do this, but it's actually a pretty cool approach to kind of be a community-based venue, to give DJs their first club shows, to keep ticket prices reasonably cheap, to not just kind of immediately look to the biggest and best thing that's there. And I'm so personally excited about what that means for us in the next 12 months. It already feels like a lot more. I feel warm and fuzzy inside, you know.
And not only an important reminder for us, but also for other venues and other promoters and agencies as well. You know, we have all the talent we need here, and I think everyone should be looking internally.
I wonder if what we'll see in the next couple of years is because it's going to be really challenging for people to domestically, let alone internationally, that maybe this kind of global music culture that kind of can get a bit homogenous sometimes because it's so connected. I wonder if we'll see all these like thriving local scenes that just kind of cut off from the rest of the world by the nature of not being able to travel. And then in a couple of years, when, you know, maybe once international travel is open again and everything's happening, we'll discover all these bizarre pockets of music that have just been stewing during this time, and we'll find some like new genres that no one's ever heard of that's emerged in some town that's been isolated for 2 years.
We certainly hope so.
That would be an interesting outcome. Cool, guys. Well, how about let's open it up to some questions, because we might have some people on the call here who are interested. Haven't really considered the best way to do this, but how about either you could raise your hand using the raise hand function, or I'm happy for you to unmute yourself and start talking, and we'll take it from there. Always hard to be the first person. You can also, if you don't feel comfortable turning on your camera or mic, you can put things into the chat, and I'd be happy to direct those questions to one of the panelists.
Can I ask Richard a question?
Sure.
Thank you for the opportunity, by the way, Richard. We're
No problem.
Feel very privileged to be able to do a Happy Monday show. Was it initially supposed to be like a whole night of curation in several different bands rather than like each venue picks one band kind of thing?
Yeah, it was. You know, and I was really hoping that you could get some like pretty small bands on that big stage to give them an opportunity to just even experience what it's like to perform in a location like that. Maybe if you're doing it as a band, separated potentially so far from your bandmates where you might otherwise be squished together on a smaller stage somewhere. And yeah, really kind of wanted, you know, at first I was thinking multiple bands, you know, have it go for like 6 hours or whatever. But as you pointed out, people spend more money in a shorter period of time too. So there are a whole lot of different inputs coming in from all over the place, and the original concept did morph, which ended up us having to pair venues together. Yeah, you know, so it wasn't delivered as initially as anticipated, but I'm glad we were able to get something across the line for the punters' sake, the band's sake, and the venue's sake, really.
Yeah.
And just going on to something that you know you were talking about before with the label and the diversification of your venue and community focus, I think it's so important and so integral. You know, from the artist's perspective, to have those kind of relationships. And what I really wanted, why I wanted venues to curate it was because anyone who's been in a band or as an artist, solo artist, DJ, whatever, they have their like home, like a venue home that they connect with, where they drink at, where they're looked after, they give them gigs, and they have a mutually beneficial relationship. And I think it's so great that you can expand that relationship into a label, you know, or something else, and take it beyond there and broaden it. And as Dale pointed out, I think it's going to lead to some really amazing creative outcomes that would be great for people to be able to capitalize on. I'm not expecting the feds to do anything about it, but you know, the door's open for anyone else.
Thanks, guys. We've got a question in the chat from Stephen. Do any of the speakers have much interest or experience in developing shows that integrate virtual reality?
Happy to jump in on that one briefly. The feedback we've had overwhelmingly from punters generally has been that they need the physical experience of, particularly on the nightclub side of things, to really properly engage with community, because that is such a big part of the relevance of our space to them. I think there are increasingly people doing virtual reality or, you know, streaming stuff that doesn't reduce the experience quite as much. You know, quality of sound and picture and that sort of thing has improved dramatically over the last 12 months. And I think there is a really unique opportunity for venues like ours to use that to improve accessibility for people. So people who can't afford to go to shows or who have physical disabilities, that's something that we're kind of exploring at the moment. But we would love to have the kind of the option for people to buy like a far cheaper ticket to sort of watch the event happening and be able to get the sound. But I think that's kind of been the extent of it for us for the moment. It would more so be for people who couldn't come to the venue than anything.
I'm going to sound like a really, really old man here, but I just went on a, you know, walk with a friend during COVID. He told me that he'd been to a concert in a video game recently, which just blew my mind, you know, because I you know, I still play Tetris. That's kind of like the extent of my gaming experience, maybe a little bit Sega Master System. But the fact that people can be playing a computer game that they essentially live half their life in, and go and see, someone like Jay-Z do a gig, within the game. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, I know nothing about it, but I think it's a really interesting space in the VR, virtual reality and gaming world to watch for these kind of advancements.
Well, Music Victoria and the VMDO, the Victorian Music Development Office, are partnering on a project with Inverse, who make virtual reality videos. I'm just going to put it into the chat. There's still the deadline for applying, if you're an artist and interested, is March 28th, so in 5 days. And the successful artists get to do a live streamed virtual reality concert, and get paid $2,500. So if there are artists interested in dabbling in VR, I'd recommend applying. I haven't experienced what it's like, but some other colleagues in our office have, and said it's actually quite mind-blowing to be at a live gig in virtual reality. And they even said it almost feels more intimate than actually being there. As I said, haven't done it myself, but interesting idea. I think we had a question from Stave Shaw. I'd love to perform at the Bowl with my band on a bigger lineup. What is the booking process? Seems different to the usual venues. Actually keen on Footscray Arts Retreat. Okay, so, Steve's looking for some gigs, it looks like. Can anyone give Stave a gig?
I've asked the Arts Centre if they want to do another series later in the year. So, yeah, now that there's a template in place, we'll see if we can get something happening when the weather's a bit more predictable. And hopefully, the pandemic isn't making us have to reschedule shows. But yeah, thanks for putting your name in the hat there. Certainly keep that in mind. Maybe can tee you up with the Footscray Arts Centre and get you both to put on something.
Right. Well, Robyn's just put her email address in the chat. I guess if anyone wants to include their contact details or links to things they're working on to let people know about, feel free to put them in the chat. Do we have any other questions from our attendees? Nick.
Hey guys, great session. Thanks for having me. Question to, I suppose, the promoters. Is there many interstate bands and artists that are sort of keen to get down here at the moment, or are they still a little bit tentative about booking things in Victoria, and has that affected programming at all? Interstate artists?
I'd be interested to jump in on that one. So it's kind of happened both ways. So bands have been interested, but I've had quite a lot of issues with booking shows and then them not happening, and then the venue's left on like a Friday night with no show. So what I've been, and it's all sort of trial and error, but if it's sort of coming from a bigger promoter or agent, I've sort of been saying to them, let's work on like a plan B local lineup that we know can sell the same amount of tickets at like a week's notice, and give them kind of a day to let me know whether the show is going to go ahead or not. Because it's really exciting to hear from these interstate artists. But yeah, I've had some experience with some gigs where we had like a really big show that was really exciting, and then it's just sort of been cancelled on the venue, which is, yeah, really unfortunate for those relationships as well with promoters and agents and things like that.
Yeah, we've been in the same boat where we've been working with a lot of promoters and a few last minute cancellations, particularly that snap lockdown week. So we're taking a much more tentative approach, because booking our venue is booking a precinct. So it's actually a really tricky thing to get right, but it's, yeah, I totally agree, Juliette. It's about relationships and keeping the dialogue open, because, if you say no, those promoters, they're going to take those amazing artists to other venues as well. So we all just kind of need to meet halfway and be really transparent about what we all need, I reckon.
I would have to echo that sentiment. It's there's been lots of interest, but It's been incredibly hard to manage the logistics depending on where the act is coming from. We had a couple of shows pull out on us pretty last minute due to the logistics of the ever-changing situation. And we weren't as prepared as having a secondary lineup ready to go a week in advance. So yeah, we had to do some pretty quick hustling. But yeah, like people are itching to get into state to play shows. It's just about, when's the safest time to kind of prepare for that.
I just want to say to Benny, I also didn't end up being prepared enough. It was like an idea I had and I put it to the promoters or the agents, and then they actually didn't really want to help putting the lineups together. So I was sort of still left with no show. But it was me trying to do something positive, but didn't really work out in the end. So we're in the same spot.
Nice.
We feel better.
Yeah, we feel a lot better.
Do we have any other questions from the floor? Another question from Stephen. Any technological enhancements you're looking at for your venues to prepare for a different live music future?
Just last week, I was speaking to the team at the retreat, and because shows are limited capacity and probably will be for a while, we've had some instances when we've had some really, really great shows that sort of haven't been repeated. So shows like at Brunswick Music Festival, I programmed 5 shows for that. And we had a Beatles tribute show where we had local bands playing Beatles albums. And it was like a huge night, but we could only let 50 people into the room. It was a free entry show. So we have been thinking a lot more about doing a lot more live recording of shows, just audio even, and then kind of getting them mixed and released so that other people can kind of experience those shows. But we haven't really got the budget to do it right now. Just some thoughts though.
Any other cool tech enhancements from the panel?
Well, I just played like a small time gig with the band Ex Olympian the other day, and obviously that's their particular niche. You play in a perspex off room. The cables will run up the chimney to a recording studio upstairs, and people, a handful of people, it's because it's quite a small room, come and watch. But they're watching you in the recording studio, or more of a recording kind of process with a little bit of an interview happening in there too. So it's a completely different experience to playing a show, but it gives the venue and the band a different product that they can hopefully capitalize on in a myriad of different ways. But yeah, because they've got the sound, they've got the video, they've got the interview, they can put it out on whatever platforms they decide to do that with. But yeah, it would be expensive to get that going, and as I said, I'm pretty sure that's like small time venues musical niche, more than regular shows.
We entered the world of e-commerce to sell all of our wine and merch, which is interesting to say the least. We tried a few different platforms, and we had a great friend of ours, Floss, build a website for us. That I would say is probably the biggest technological advancement for us. Everything else has just been kind of general improvements to, venue wide while we've been closed on every front.
Yeah, actually, we also invested in a new ticketing platform, which is still an ongoing challenge, to be honest. And we're also doing a full rebrand, a new website, and actually kind of reflecting on some of the commentary about venues existing in different kind of spaces, not just being tied to the 4 walls kind of thing. We're really embracing that and actually changing the name of our organisation to Footscray Community Arts, and just dropping the centre, so we're not always tied to this physical location as well.
So is that a mic drop moment? Is this are you announcing it now on?
Yeah, this is the first time we've mentioned it, so there you
go.
Spread the word. But you know, there's heaps of stuff. Like I think doing the live recording stuff and the video production just really showed how many gaps we have in just basic kind of equipment. So we're upgrading all of our projectors, and we're just hustling for money anywhere we can to kind of get the venue to a baseline that's actually good. Instead of, I mean, we're pretty creative at making things happen, but there's a long way to go for us to be a venue that is really supportive of kind of pushing the boundaries a bit, kind of what Stephen's talking about. But yeah, we're working on it.
No one's made any non-fungible tokens as part of their new business model? No. I've been learning about those recently.
Benny would be interested.
Nick asked another question. Were there any surprise or super handy funding sources like grants that helped the venue survive your programming happen? Yeah, maybe that's, I guess, a pretty good question. Perhaps we could go around to each of the panelists and get any sense of what funding support you may have received or not. Robyn, would you mind starting?
Yeah, sure. We were willing to take money from anyone, is the short answer. But we were lucky as an arts venue, we were eligible for Creative Victoria funding. So that was a really significant thing. The biggest contributor was JobKeeper, to be honest. We had 37 staff get JobKeeper. So we've got a big team. And without that, I don't think we'd exist currently. The cash flow boost for employers and the VCGLR stuff also really helped us. But actually at the time, and being shut meant we could really hustle and talk to private sector and donors as well, which we're really traditionally quite bad at. So it was just time. It was actually time just to ask for help. So yeah.
Juliette?
Yeah, so we also received funding from Creative Victoria. And
the venue grants one?
Yes, yeah. The venue grants one, yeah. And so, yeah, that was really helpful to sort of, we had all these ideas of how to kind of like bring music back and be able to pay venues initially, pay artists initially a bit of a guarantee on top of ticket sales in the start of when we started bringing things back, until we kind of worked out a model that really worked with ticket sales. And also JobKeeper, super helpful for just bar staff, keeping them employed, keeping people to do things kind of behind the scenes and set things up. I did a lot of work helping kind of the rest of the team apply for grants and like help the general manager with that.
Rich, I guess, you know, you're not a venue, but and obviously I guess the funding primarily came from state government, from the Arts Centre, but I guess, do you have any experience or intel of like good funding sources for people?
No, not really. As you said, the Arts Centre and the government sourced most of the cash for the Happy Mondays event. But, you know, personally, I would have just been screwed without JobKeeper.
So you were eligible for JobKeeper as a sole trader?
I was told originally that I wasn't. And then my very entrepreneurial partner got me to make merch shirts for myself. And I hired Bradbeer shirt that I thought I'd sell to a couple of bandmates. But
I saw that. Ended
up flogging about 140 of them, which shocked me. I don't think I've been hired by that many people, but that got, you know, a month's rent paid and a few bills. And then I figured out like that, yeah, as a sole trader, I could get that, but not everyone could, you know, so I was very lucky. And, you know, most of the artists I work for can't get it because their business model is different to mine. So, yeah, I was lucky, you know, in a personal sense.
Benny and Leon?
Yeah, we had lots, thankfully. We had the cash flow boosts initially, JobKeeper we had 10 staff on JobKeeper. which I know was a godsend for all of them, but also for us, retaining that kind of family. The Creative Victoria Live Music Venues Fund, we actually, surprisingly, we got a grant from the federal government, which was for infrastructure works. So that wasn't COVID related, but we've been able to build a disabled toilet and purchase a ramp and do sound attenuation work.
What was that? What was that fund?
Live Venues Australia.
Yeah, Live Music Australia.
Live Music Australia. Yeah.
So there's multiple rounds over the next 3 years. Funnily enough, yeah, we didn't realise until afterwards, but that had actually been confirmed on a federal government level before the pandemic. So they just went ahead with it anyway. But that was for sound attenuation works as well, which were really crucial for us because our nearest neighbour is about 3 meters away. On top of that, the little sort of the snap lockdown, there was a little Victorian government business support fund extension. There's a few of them throughout the year as well. But yeah, I think, there was a lot. And without them, we would definitely not be here.
I was just going to say, how did you guys manage, I guess, the workload involved in like applying for and acquitting, and I guess because there's quite a lot of work involved in accessing that money, even if it is there for you. One in my conversations with various venues and I guess music businesses in general is that it's not like an arts organisation where you've got staff that are kind of experts at applying for grants and on the payroll and do this stuff all the time. How did, and I guess this question could apply to any of the venues on the call, but how did you manage assigning staff resources to doing that? And how did you manage that?
Well, we've got big thanks to Nick Coops, who's on this call. He wrote our creative
awesome.
For the rest of them, we had that approach because that was the one that was the most important. I guess it was definitely a concern for us, like how much cash can we outlay on this stuff if we're not going to definitely get it, or if we don't feel like it's likely that we'll get it.
Yeah.
But we also had no programming to do. So we spent a lot of time writing things. For some of the bigger ones, we wrote them together, and then we would get somebody, Coops generally, to proofread them and just tell us if anything glaring sort of stood out, because at least that removed, a few hours of the workload for doing the actual writing.
But yeah, as Robyn also said, not only is there a lot of organisational and admin work in getting the grants written, but if you get the money, you also have to follow through with the projects that you said you were going to do. So, and in the specified time frame. So, we've been super lucky to have a few really great people engaged to help us implement a lot of these things, and we're very quickly coming to the end of our Live Music Australia grant. So there's lots of building and installation and acoustic panels happening at the club at the moment. But yeah, like Liam said, without it all, we would have been in a lot of trouble for sure.
And would anyone else like to respond regarding, I guess, the time it takes to apply for a quick grants?
Yeah, it's pretty much our world, but we don't. Even though we're kind of a biggish small arts org, we don't have a dedicated grant writer or anything. We actually found that it just doesn't really work for us, because usually the strength of the grant is in really being connected to the project. So you kind of need that hands-on way of writing and communicating. So a lot of that's done by myself and the artistic director, but actually being closed gave us an opportunity to skill up some of our other team to write grants better, which was really good. So kind of investing in their capacity. But really, I don't know, it was Naomi Campbell that said she won't get out of bed for less than $10,000. There are some grants that are so small, but take hours and hours of time to write. And I think if you did a cost benefit analysis with some of them, it's actually not worth it. So I think we've just been better at kind of, we're usually on the hustle for any support we can get, but I think last year we just made some decisions about investing in grants that we thought were better suited to us and not wasting their time, really.
Yeah, you kind of got to pick and choose, don't you? So Stephen's asking, whether whether anyone's looking for volunteers, essentially. Is there anyone on this call that's seeking volunteers in the next few months? Or have any of you utilised volunteers?
I'd say definitely worth getting in touch. It depends on the sort of roles that people would be looking for, but we're absolutely open to a discussion. If we can offer something that's of interest to people, then definitely.
One thing I've found at Music Victoria, especially when COVID hit, was there was a whole lot of people saying, "What can I do to help? What can I do to help?" You don't have to pay me. We just want to do what we can to kind of address these issues. And I guess that becomes really difficult because then you got this coordination problem. There's no shortage of people willing to come to the table, but then how do you organise all that? And it's difficult. But I've certainly experienced an incredible amount of goodwill. One of my positives through COVID has been just seeing the industry cooperate and collaborate like never before. I've been in meetings with people from different businesses and different walks of life that would ordinarily be competitors or at least not talk to each other, who are just going, what can we do? How can we work together? It's been a nice feeling.
Yeah, I was even in a record store, Rocksteady in the city the other day. And a lot of people just don't know how music works from a financial perspective. And he was shocked. It was a businessman buying records. He was completely shocked at how much a vinyl cost to make, and how difficult it was for the artist to sell them. And he pretty much just said to Pat, if you know any artists that need cash to make records, I'll pay for it. The goodwill's out there.
Goodwill is there. It's true.
It depends what's your skill set, or how much cash have you got?
Yeah. Look, if there's some wealthy person who just wants to fund all the vinyl manufacturing in Australia,
fantastic.
Wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah. I'll hit up Pat at Rocksteady for his number.
Hope Pat's doing okay. I can imagine running a retail business in the city right now would be absolute hell. So big love to you, Pat, if you end up listening to this. Any other questions for the panel? People saying this is great. Yeah. I guess, this has been really, uplifting for me personally. I feel like a lot of the conversations that we're involved in at Music Victoria are very much about kind of the music industry collapsing and falling apart and what can we do about it. To hear all of your stories and I guess just the positivity that's coming and the ways in which you've adapted has been, I guess, really heartening. A lot of you mentioned JobKeeper, and this will be, I guess, a bit of a depressing topic potentially, but it looks like that's coming to an end in a week. What's the viability looking like for your venues and operations after JobKeeper ends?
I'd say from our perspective, troubling. This morning's a great step in the right direction. 75% is a lot better than 50, or we were sort of at 33 given our actual square meterage. But yeah, we don't really know until, we haven't been paying all of those expenses. Commercial tenancy rent relief has also been something that we haven't mentioned, but without that, we would have been, we've been to three mediations with a landlord who hates us now. I mean, we were just sort of standing up for ourselves, but we couldn't afford to pay 5 figures, well into the 5 figures per week for rent, in addition to the insurance that we were paying as well. So that's been massive. I suppose moving forward from here, once that goes back to normal and we don't have JobKeeper, we would hope that we can sort of still make it work. But I would be surprised if we were breaking even at anything less than 100% personally.
Having to pay rent, full rent, without
plus what we deferred as well.
Yeah, plus what we deferred, which is a sizable amount of money at this point, while being restricted still in capacity. I mean, for anyone's business, it's not going to be viable at all.
Yeah, we need to get back to full trading for any of these businesses to really be viable.
Or if not, then there needs to be some consideration for that, and it needs to be either extended or some kind of support to make the difference.
Juliette, how are things looking at the retreat?
Yeah, well, it's been, I mean, shows have been selling out a lot and things are doing well that way, but the venue being much busier also means a lot more staff, and managing things like capacities has meant that we've had to have hire a staff member to be a door person for 8 shows a week, which is another sort of separate cost. So I guess I hope that we can keep paying bands the same or better than we are now. But as staff costs stack up, we also need to weigh up how much money are we making or losing having 8 shows, paying soundies for hours a week. So that stuff we'll just have to manage as it comes, really. But in terms of how shows are going and being able to pay artists, it's been really positive, and I hope that it sort of continues. But hard to say, really.
Yeah. Robyn?
Yeah, it's hard to say for us. We feel okay, but we don't really think the impact will be visible to us until maybe 6 months down the line, because a lot of how we operate is venue hire, staff hire, and external events and stuff. So we just don't know how the demand and how the market's going to respond to the end of JobKeeper as well. So it's a watching brief, and we just manage cash flow very, very carefully, really. But our goal is to maintain our team, at the core of it, that they're the heart of what we do. So supporting them is our biggest priority, really.
Thanks, Robyn. Any final questions? All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Look, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to our panelists. This will be made available online, so if there are people who would like to listen and haven't had a chance, that will be available to people. If you're not a Music Victoria member, I suggest you sign up to be one, and you'll get access to our benefits and I guess receive more information about events like this. But yeah, just want to say thanks to everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks heaps.
Thank you very much for your time.
No, have a good afternoon.